Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Well, hello again, everybody. Welcome back to Game Over Toronto and Game Over Ottawa. That's right, it's a special crossover edition for the Battle of Ontario as the Ottawa Senators shut out the Maple Leafs 3-0. A fairly listless performance by the Maple Leafs, I'll say, and a fairly dominant performance by the Senators. We'll get into everything here. Lots to talk about, lots to break down from both sides, and just, about the game in general. My name is Dominic Jones. I'm from Game Over Toronto, and with me from Game Over Ottawa, we've got Nick Robinson. Nick, good to talk to you tonight. I bet you're feeling a lot better than I am right now.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Probably a big difference between the two of us right now. But no, happy to be here. Happy to talk to you. I always like to sit down with a rival and get some banter in. So let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start by just asking you, what did you think overall of this game from a Sens perspective and also from a Leafs perspective?
Yeah. Well, I'll first start a little personal anecdote. So Dominic, by admission, I am born and raised in Toronto. So these are big ones. Yeah, these are big ones for me when you've got all the friends as Leaf fans. So this is a big one for me every time it happens. But I honestly don't, from a Senators perspective, I don't think you could have asked for much more than what transpired there. Just really, really dominant 60 minutes. And, the Leafs had some looks, particularly when they were on power plays throughout the game. They were pushing there when they had the net empty, but clearly from a Toronto perspective, I think you can tell there was no Austin Matthews in the lineup tonight.
Yeah, I think that's what stood out to me most for the Leafs was this was the first game. Austin has missed a couple of games. Now, this was the first time where I felt like they missed him. The other games, everybody kind of stepped up. Everybody was pulling their weight. This was a game where I felt like they were missing both Austin Matthews and Max Pacioretty because, Austin has that game-breaking ability where he can step in. He'll score a big goal when you need him to. And Patches has been a guy who's kind of been the glue, keeping everything together. And you notice as soon as he comes out of the lineup, those lines start to feel a lot more shaky. There's a lot more sort of uncertainty there once you're missing those two guys. And this was a game where it felt like you needed more from everybody, and you can't help but wonder what Austin Matthews could have brought to this game had he been there. But of course, he wasn't, so there's no point in dwelling on it, much as I think Leafs fans might find ourselves doing. The game starts very impressively for the Sens. 41 seconds into the game, Josh Norris opens the scoring. How did you feel in that first minute, sort of realizing, oh, our team is so much better tonight?
Yeah, well, I was sitting there just screaming at my TV. Again, I also live with a Maple Leafs fan right now. So we're sitting together on the couch watching this. And I perhaps in Toronto, they're maybe not so familiar with some of the Senators players. Like, I feel like Josh Norris is a guy like a lot of people in outside of Ottawa don't talk about or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sitting there just screaming the whole time they're going down the ice, like, give it to the shooter, because Josh Norris got that deceptively good release on him. And from a Toronto perspective, it's not the guy you want to have that good of a look 40 seconds into the game. Just it was a complete breakdown on their end. I think it was Nylander and McMahon sort of got in each other's way.
Yeah, Nylander, McMahon, and Riley all kind of wound up in exactly the wrong spots to be.
Yeah, no, and like full credit to the Senators because they really made the most of that rush, quickly got up the ice 4v2 and really got the puck in a good position. The Anthony Stolar has been so good early in the season, so I think that was really key that the Senators got that early goal, got to him early, and because I think it just gave them a really good jolt of confidence from like minute one.
Yeah, absolutely, and it was indicative of, I think, how the game was going to go from a Leafs perspective as well. Because like you said, Nylander, McMahon, and Riley all kind of get caught in the wrong place. There's a little bit of a pileup at the Senators' blue line, leading to a situation where you have Oliver Ekman-Larsson back, joined by Max Domi, who is about the last forward on the Leafs team, other than maybe Ryan Reeves you want on a back check, because God love the kid, and he's struggling, but he's not he's not the most reliable defensively. My co-host Zach could go into great detail about that and about his struggles this season. But it kind of set the tone that Ottawa was going to make the best of their chances, and consistently put themselves in positions to win, to succeed. And the Leafs just kind of bumbled everything. I think the Leafs kept falling back into old habits. I think that where Mitch Marner has been doing a much better job of shooting the puck. That was a kind of a meme early in the season, was that he would pass and never shoot. In the last couple of games, he's been shooting, and then in this game there were a couple of points from like, shoot it, Mitch, please, for the love of God, shoot it, Mitch, and he didn't. The power play, you can't expect to score it the way they've been scoring for the last couple of games, but they kind of fell back into they fell back into not being as effective. They got stuck in the neutral zone a couple of times, couldn't get the kind of entries that they need, and they just sort of fell back into their old habits. Whereas it felt like the Senators were elevating their play, and something that they talked a lot about on the broadcast was, this is a team that feels poised to take another step. And, they're in a position where I think now they would be fourth in the Atlantic or close to it, or either having leapfrog Tampa or in a good position to do so. And, some of those teams at the top of the Atlantic are getting ready to fall off. Hopefully not the Leafs, but, Boston and Tampa, they can do it. And Ottawa looks like they might be, of the hopefully up and coming teams in the Atlantic, they look like they're best positioned to make that jump. Is that something that Sens fans are feeling?
Yeah, well, it's really just the highs and lows of the Senators season. I was at the game at home last Thursday against the Islanders, and the Senators lost 4-2. And the vibes after that game were like terrible, because it just, a lot of people just saying, same old team, falling into the same habits. And that was coming off a loss to Buffalo the game before. And the vibes were not good. But to respond the way they did, beating Boston on Saturday, and now in Toronto to, really dominate a game for 60 minutes, it's just, you don't want to jump and say the team's turned the corner, because they've just really flipped and flopped early on in the season. They're 8-7 now, right? It's like they're barely creaking over 500, but if you're looking at sort of the body of the performances, like, aside from a couple of games, I'm pretty pleased with what I've seen. Like, this is, I'd say tonight was probably their best full 60 of the season. Toronto is absolutely no slouch of a team. I'm not one of the Senators fans that likes to big up and overreact. I wasn't, saying the last few years that they were ready to jump the Maple Leafs and leapfrog them, because I honestly didn't feel like that they were in a position to do that. But, and I still don't feel that way. But I think you're seeing just sort of a bit of an evolution of the Senators at this point, because I think, based on the play tonight, the Senators have won 4 straight in Toronto now, but I don't feel I hadn't truly felt like that they had been able to really compete with the Leafs. Whereas tonight, I sort of felt like they were ready to compete with the Maple Leafs. Again, that's a Toronto team minus Austin Matthews. That's a huge piece of it. But I'm pretty pleased, having just watched that 60 minutes, and honestly just can't wait to watch the highlights again later, because that's, it's great. They look great tonight.
Mm-hmm. And if we take a look at things from a coaching perspective, how are you feeling about Travis Green and what he's been getting out of his club so far this year?
Yeah, well, I think you saw it all on show tonight. It just really solid defensively. The Senators have been such a wreck defensively the past couple of seasons. The goaltending, hasn't helped them or didn't help to bail them out in seasons past. It's been a talking point, I think, in a lot of markets, especially Ottawa, the goaltending so far this year, because Linus Ullmark just hasn't found any real consistency. But hopefully, with his first shutout now as a Senator under his belt, that's a sign of things to come. But I mean, you look at it again, Toronto fans won't have watched much of the Senators this year, I imagine, but um, they just look different. They look a lot more solid. They don't look as panicked as they do when they get hemmed in, as they did in years past. And I think you're just seeing a sort of evolution of the players like Tim Stützle, who I thought had an unbelievable game tonight, and guys like Brady Tkachuk. Really just taken another step, and I think that's so big. But really, full credit to the new coaching staff too, because it looks like they've really gotten home like a message to the players about being responsible defensively and just sort of trying to take that next step and be pros.
Yeah, and sort of on the flip side, Toronto, we've also got a new coaching staff. We've got our new head coach in Craig Berube, and he's been at times, I think he's really been able to bring out the best in his players, and then there have been other games where, I think it's been a struggle, and this was definitely one that was a struggle. There was one of the early TV timeouts, I think in the second period. Berube was really trying to get William Nylander and Max Domi and to a lesser extent Bobby McMahon going, trying to get that line to produce the way that we saw that they could earlier this year, and ultimately just nothing came from it. None of those guys could really get going. They, Domi had a good chance late. Nylander, he is just so talented that every now and again he just sort of manages to, create something, but they never really clicked. They were never able to really look dangerous. And the times they looked dangerous as individuals was, power play situations or 6-on-5 situations where, they were out there with other players as well. But you mentioned Tim Stützle. Early on in the second period, he gets things rolling with the second goal of the game. It sounds like you're pretty happy with his play this so far this season.
Yeah, it just looks completely right back to where everybody sort of thought he was going 2 seasons ago when he put up 90 points. Took a bit of a step back last year, but I think just even like I personally wasn't down on the player at all after last year. It just was clear to me that there was a bit of an issue, whether it was injury or just confidence related with the team. But I mean, I'm looking at the stats like from tonight. They're putting the sort of the game score impact cards out now, and it just it looks like when I was watching, it looked like to me that the Leafs were really trying hard to get the Riley and Ekman Larson out against him, and I don't think for a single shift that matchup sort of worked for the Leafs tonight, because I mean, to me, it just looked like Tim Stützle was able to really influence the game every time he was on the ice, except for with the empty net. He curiously couldn't figure it out there. Neither could any of the Senators, to be fair.
That was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. Like it's for as much talk as there was about empty nets coming into this game, to then see the Sens miss. I counted 3. But I may have miscounted. They could have been 4 or even 5, like chances where they could have ended this one. They could have wrapped it up. And I mean, they did. They won 3-0. So in the end, you can't really complain. But there were a couple of real strange missed opportunities. I felt like that it was just an little odd note for the game to end on, despite the otherwise stellar performance from the Sens.
Yeah, I mean, and that's another like coaching thing, right? That I'm sure Travis Green's gonna give it to him about that, and whether it's in practice or post game tonight, right? It's another thing about like sort of just the professionalism.
Mm-hmm.
You just ice the game, get it over with, even if it's 3-0, you're feeling comfortable.
Yeah.
Because Toronto was pushing, trying to get back into it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously the likelihood was pretty small at that point, but again, and you could see it. TSN and I. Kept putting the camera on the bench. I think Mike Johnson pointed out too on the broadcast.
Yeah.
Just, Travis Green was obviously a little bit annoyed that they just couldn't put the game to bed at the end. But, it's another thing that they're going to have to continue to grow and, figure out as a team.
Yeah.
So if, but at the end of the day, if you're nitpicking the play with the empty net and trying to kill the game, I guess it's a pretty solid performance, right?
Yeah, that's a pretty good place to be.